critics. Here to break it down, we've got the strategist, Democrat Steve McMahon, and Republican Todd Harris. Todd, since you're laughing so heartily, I have to believe you're laughing at something. It beats me what it is. We just had a little kerfuffle there with the congressman. What do you make of this Republican strategy to basically pass a bill today that has no specificity in it, somewhere down the road cap the spending, and try to get this two-thirds vote for a constitutional amendment in the heat of battle? Your thoughts about that?
Well, I like the plan that the House is going to pass today. I liked Senator Coburn's plan. I liked Congressman Ryan's plan. The point is, Republicans, time after time, are actually introducing plans. And I agree with Congressman Walsh entirely. The president, there is no piece of paper, no document that exists anywhere that says President Obama's plan to fight the debt, to reduce the debt, and curb spending. It doesn't exist. He barely even mentioned the debt in his State of the Union. For 6 months, he was AWOL in the discussions, and now he's talking about it's Armageddon. Wait, hold on.
I got your bill here. It's got no cuts in it. All this talk about your vainglorious greatness about naming cuts. There's no cuts in here.
Chris, the Ryan plan, the Coburn plan, individual.
No, the cut that you're voting on today has no cuts in it.
Who cares about?
Well, that's Todd.
Well, you just bragged about it a second ago. Steve, help him out here. He's just bragging about something that has nothing on it.
No,
there's nothing on this paper.
Where is the president's plan?
Can I answer, Todd, can I answer your question?
Yeah, where is it?
Okay, so let me just explain this to Todd, because he's apparently been away from the news lately. The Vice President of the United States had Republican members of Congress, the leadership up at the Vice President's mansion at the White House repeatedly over the last several months to try to do a deal that was outlined in the NBC poll that 58% of the public supports, that would close the deficit or cut spending that the President and Democrats don't want to do on Medicare and Medicaid, and it would be a balanced plan that would take something from the wealthiest Americans and from corporations. And the Republicans said no. They walked away from the table, and now they have their bumper sticker that they're going to pass in the House of Representatives tonight, Chris, and you're absolutely right. They're going to send it over to the Senate. It's not going to get two-thirds votes. They know that. And in the meantime, we're going to be another week closer to America defaulting and going off the ledge, our debt rating being called into question, interest rates rising, and the American people are going to pay the price. And it's really just for the gamesmanship and showmanship of the Tea Party Republicans in the House of Representatives, because John Boehner wants a deal.
Well, let's watch John Boehner. Here's his description. You follow this up, Todd. Here's John Boehner's description of what they're doing today. I think he's overstating the reality of this. It's the cut, cap, and balance plan, which has no plan in it if you actually read it. But let's listen.
This week, the House will pass a plan that addresses our debt and spending while taking action on the debt ceiling. And while the House once again acts responsibly, the administration still won't present a plan or even say what cuts it's willing to make to end Washington's spending binge and the economic uncertainty that it's creating. This unfortunate veto threat should make clear that the issue is not congressional inaction, but rather the president's unwillingness to cut spending and restrain the future growth of our government.
You know, I'm reminded of Tokyo Rose, here played by John Boehner, and Tojo is played by Eric Cantor. Is he reading something that Cantor wrote for him, or what? He is about as excited about that, Todd Harris, as a POW is. Your thoughts?
Well, I think he is...
Did you see it? It looks like he had a knife in his back. But go ahead.
Well, I think he wants to get something done. I think he wants to get something done that's going to actually help solve the debt problem. I would give your arguments today, Chris, a whole lot more credence and credibility if for the past 6 months you've been pounding on the president saying, where is your plan? Where is the leadership out of this White House to guide the country out of the debt mess that we are in? The fact is the president outsourced this entire thing to the vice president. The president barely...
Had a plan.
There was no plan. They supposedly behind behind closed doors, they said, okay, and yeah, there are some things that we'll put on the table. No, that's not a plan.
How did they get to $4 trillion? They somehow added it up.
There's nothing that can be scored. All the president does is give speeches,
nobody
and
wants to
then
cut
as soon
nobody wants to cut spending, Todd, and you know it. I'm looking at this right now, the plan that you're voting on tonight, and it's very important we talk about today what's happening today. You're passing a bill, and you know it. It doesn't have anything in there about Medicare or any of the Ryan plan stuff. All this is a cheap thing to say you're going to cut discretionary spending, and it doesn't even say what the actual spending is. This is bogus. It's an empty piece of paper, and you're bragging about this thing. This big cut, cap, and balance has nothing in it, and I was amazed. I had a hunch it wouldn't be there. I got a copy of it and actually did something nobody's doing in your house, in the Republican side, reading it. There are no cuts here. Where are the cuts?
Okay,
it doesn't say anything. Go ahead.
Senator Coburn introduced a plan that was extraordinarily detailed.
It's not the Coburn plan, Todd. It's the bumper sticker that's being voted on tonight.
Okay, the House has a plan. The Coburn has a plan.
Why do you keep saying that? Have you read this,
Ryan,
have you read it?
Chris, you're saying what? No, I haven't read it.
Well, how do you know you're saying there's something in there? I can't. I'm reading it right now. I can't see it.
At least you're holding on to something. You know what? This is the president's plan right here. This is it. Nothing. It's paper. There is no plan because there's no leadership. Period.
The president's plan outlines $4 trillion in cuts.
There is no plan, Steve.
And to the Speaker's credit, that was a hostage video, and he is being held hostage by the Tea Party Republicans.
We're not getting anywhere. Let's go to Bill Clinton. Let's go to the outlet pass, as they say in football. Here's the outlet pass. Former President Bill Clinton has weighed in on the debt ceiling with an interview with the National Memo's Joe Conason. He writes, quote, Clinton says that he would invoke the so-called constitutional option to raise the nation's debt ceiling, quote, without hesitation and force the courts to stop me in order to prevent a default. That's the nationalmemo.com. Do you make a thought? You're close to President Clinton, Steve. Do you think that's really true, that he believes the president has the executive authority to pay the bills?
Well, I think there are a lot of constitutional experts out there who believe the president does have the authority. And I don't think this president is interested in pursuing that route because it doesn't really do anything but kick the can down the road. He wants the big deal. The Speaker wants the big deal. And the Tea Party Republicans are holding it up. I do think you're right, though, Chris, that President Clinton has thrown the outlet pass here because Barack Obama can, in the interest of avoiding the debt collapse and the calamity that could befall us on the 3rd of August.
Okay, Todd, as nonpartisan, is it better for the president if this thing comes to hell in early August and nothing's happening and the House leadership is saying no deal unless you give us our 2/3 balanced budget amendment deal, we're not going with you? What's the president supposed to do at that point when he's up against a hard place?
Well, if the question is it better politically for the president to send out letters that say, we're sorry, we can't pay your Social Security, yeah, that is going to aggregate better for the president. I don't think that it's going, I certainly hope that it does not come to that, not just as a partisan, but as an American.
Well, let me ask you, what would you do if you're the House leader right now and you wanted to end this deal with the best part? You know, the old deal was if you got the hot hand, and the Republicans do on the spending issue. You guys are ahead on the spending issue. Most people say you're the party of less taxes and you'd probably cut spending better. I think that's generally the assumption when people vote. So you get a 4-to-1 swap or even a 3.5 or a 5 swap, whatever the swap is. Why don't you take a really good deal, give the president some revenues as a face saver, and say deal and move on. That way you've got $4 billion in cuts, maybe $1 billion in new revenues. Isn't that a better deal than holding up the government like this? Why don't you do it like that?
2 points. Number one, no one's opposed to increasing government revenue. The question is how you do it. And if we're talking about reforming the tax code, lowering rates, and then getting rid of all these ridiculous exemptions, I think the overwhelming majority of Republicans will sign on to that. If you don't do it that way, the problem is what history has shown is that every time we raise taxes, Washington just spends the money. You know, anyone who thinks that we would raise taxes and then that money would automatically get applied to the debt hasn't spent much time looking at history.
Well, the money's already been spent, unfortunately. We are running, what is it, a $2 trillion debt right now. Anyway, deficit right now. Thank you very much, Steve McMahon. Thank you, Todd Harris. We see the situation. Up next, what does it say about the Republican presidential field when another group of party insiders is trying to recruit Chris Christie to run? They still don't like the list that's in front of us. They're still looking to this guy. Hasn't he said no enough already? Stick around for the sideshow. You're watching Hardball, only on MSNBC.